She only took one sip because she was thirsty, because no one warned her. They dragged her into the circle under a blackened moon, barefoot, blood on her lips, the shattered chalice still warm beside her. She drank it, one elder whispered, the first alpha's blood. She should be dead, burned from the inside out. Instead, the runes flared. The ground trembled. Wolves growled, but none dared approach. Elra raised her head, trembling. "I didn't know," she whispered. The sky split with a sound like a howl buried beneath centuries, and in the silence that followed, the oldest alpha dropped to one knee. Not to dominate, but because something older had just awakened. Her. Before we get into the story, if you love werewolf stories, give us a like and comment where you are watching from. The hall was never meant for her kind. The ritual circle, carved into black stone older than memory, pulsed faintly beneath Elra's bare feet as she swept ash and dried pine needles into a cracked copper pan. The air was thick with old incense and wolf scent, spice, power, and blood. Everything about this place warned her away, and yet here she was, as she always was, cleaning where the alphas tread, scrubbing symbols she'd never been taught to read. Invisible, obedient. Her wrists ached, raw from the iron ties she'd only just been unshackled from, but she didn't dare pause. Not when the High Council was convening in less than an hour. Not when Elder Morvain's voice still echoed in her head from that morning. "Don't let the filth of your birth stain our sacred ground." The corners of her mouth twitched upward at that. If they truly feared stains, they wouldn't host blood rites on stone. A soft tremor vibrated through the floor as the first light of dusk dimmed outside. She stopped, kneeling as the tremor passed. No quake, just the moon rising. She'd always felt it before anyone else. No one believed her when she said the moon hummed. But it did. Tonight, it felt louder, like something waiting. Elra moved toward the center altar, careful not to step on the etched runes surrounding it. The chalice sat atop a pedestal of blackened bone, its surface swirling with what she assumed was thick ceremonial wine, dark, almost black, and laced with silver sheen. She'd been told not to touch it. She hadn't intended to, but thirst clawed at her throat. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, and her last drink had been a gutter bucket of rainwater and ash. Her tongue felt like paper, her breath hot. She wiped sweat from her brow, trembling. She only meant to look. The chalice called to her. Her hand hovered above it, then settled. Just a sip, a servant's mistake. She'd refill it before anyone noticed. No one would care. No one ever did. The metal was strangely warm in her hands, humming like the moon inside her chest. She lifted it to her lips. The taste hit like thunder. It wasn't wine. It was alive. Fire, ancient and screaming, tore through her mouth, her throat, her stomach. She gasped as the liquid surged through her bloodstream, dragging her to her knees. Her breath hitched, her pulse cracked, her spine arched in a silent scream. She dropped the chalice, but it didn't fall. It hovered, spinning midair, suspended above the circle. The runes beneath her flared white-hot, then blue, then silver. They moved. Not glowed, moved, shifting like something breathing beneath the stone, rearranging themselves into a symbol she'd never seen before, but recognized in her bones. The symbol of the first. A wind howled from nowhere, lifting dust and robes and ash as if the hall itself exhaled. Outside, wolves began to howl in tandem, hundreds of them, answering a sound only they could hear. Elra screamed as the blood reached her heart. Pain exploded behind her eyes. Her skin rippled with heat and frost, pulling her between burning and freezing until she didn't know if she was alive or ending. Light poured from her chest in long silver tendrils that wrapped around her limbs, binding her, branding her. She convulsed once, twice, then stilled. The chalice dropped into her hands like it had never left, and then, with a brittle chime like breaking bone, it shattered. Elra blinked through the haze. Shards of the sacred chalice scattered around her, steaming. Her hands were untouched. She should have died. Her vision cleared just enough to see her reflection in the polished obsidian beneath her. Her eyes were no longer brown, they were moon silver. Then the light above her shifted. She looked up through the open ceiling of the hall at the moon that had just risen and watched it go black, not eclipsed, darkened. The moon itself had turned. The darkness didn't come all at once. It crept in like smoke, seeping into her lungs, behind her eyes, beneath her nails. Her body arched against the stone, but she felt nothing solid beneath her anymore. Only flame. Blood, wrong blood, old blood, howled inside her like a living thing. Not just heat, pain. Ancient, intelligent, purposeful. She clawed at her chest, gasping, but the breath wouldn't come. She was dying. No, she was becoming. Somewhere beyond the agony, voices shouted, robes swirled, boots thundered over sacred ground, but they were so far away, just noise breaking against the tidal wave rising inside her. The moon was no longer outside. It was inside, pressing against her rib cage, watching her from within. She screamed, then nothing. "Burn the body," said one voice, cold and sure, "before the infection spreads." "She drank from Varkun's cup," another muttered, horrified. "No one survives the first's blood. No one." The chalice is gone, destroyed. Her touch shattered it, proof enough that she's cursed. She's still breathing. Then let her die slower. Hands pressed to her skin, fingers at her throat. Something sharp grazed her wrist. She's gone. A lie. Inside her chest, her heart beat once, slow, deep, lunar. They didn't hear it, but something else did. Far beyond the mountain, wolves went silent. The ritual chamber had become a tomb. Her body was laid on stone, still pulsing with broken runes. Elders circled around her in robes of mourning and fear. Their silence was not reverence, it was strategy. To some, she was already a problem solved. To others, a weapon waiting to explode. "She must be burned," Elder Morvain said again, voice sharp as shattered ice, "before her presence stains the ground further." "She's not moving," grumbled Thorn Ashridge, arms crossed. "Not speaking, no breath, no wolf, whatever she was, she's gone now." "She's not gone." The voice came from the shadows. A woman stepped forward, darker of eye, lean and sharp as a blade. The captain, Ceres Nightclaw. "Her heart is still beating." "You imagine things," Morvain snapped. Ceres's boots clicked across the stone. She stopped just before the body, crouched beside the girl. Her fingers brushed Elira's wrist, a pulse, slow, measured, impossibly steady. Ceres stood slowly. "She's alive." The chamber split open in chaos. Alive means corrupted. She should be ashes, yet she's whole. She defied the moon's judgment. She was chosen. That voice came softer, a trembling whisper from the back, one of the younger elders, barely into his second century. His hand shook as he pointed toward the girl. "Her blood didn't kill her, it changed her." "Blasphemy," Morvain hissed. "Varkun's blood was sacred, sealed, guarded for a reason. No one was meant to touch it, let alone survive it. That wasn't selection, that was defilement." "Then why did the moon turn?" The room stilled. Not a single wolf spoke, because they'd all seen it, felt it. The moment the girl collapsed, the sky itself had recoiled. The moon, unchanging, eternal, had blackened as if mourning, or warning, or both. And now she was breathing again. Her fingers twitched first. They moved like someone waking from a dream they didn't want to end. Her skin was hot, but her breath came cool. She felt like snow atop fire, balanced and wrong. Thought returned before sight, then sound, and with it, the moon. Not just light, not a presence in the sky. It was speaking, She didn't hear words, not exactly. It moved through her blood, syllables carved in bone and starlight, a pulse that wasn't her own. She sat up, gasping. Elders shouted. Ceres stepped back, blade half drawn. Elra looked at her hands, pale, unburned, but something inside them glowed, something not meant for human skin. The moon whispered again, and this time it said her name. He felt it long before the messengers came. A pressure in his chest like the moment before a storm, where the world holds its breath and everything wild inside you rises to meet it. Alpha King Kaelin Blackmore stood on the balcony of his keep, wind lifting the dark edges of his cloak, knuckles clenched on the stone railing as the moon, once full and silver, turned black above him. His wolf stilled, then growled, not in warning, not in rage, in submission. Kaelin's breath left him in a slow exhale. That shouldn't be possible. No one, no thing, could silence his wolf, not even the full moon's call, and yet something ancient, something that curled like bone memory and cold iron through his spine, forced his beast down to its knees inside him. The last time he'd felt anything even close to this, he was 16 and standing before his dying father's blood-choked throne. But this was different. This was deeper, primal, and then the knock came. The soldier at the door stammered before speaking. "There's been a breach at the High Circle." Kaelin didn't wait for the details. He was already moving. The horses couldn't match his urgency, neither could the guard. He left both behind within the first mile, shifting mid-sprint as his cloak fell away, and bones cracked, fur ripping through skin as his wolf form tore through the forest. Black, massive, and deathly silent. He moved like smoke through the trees, like shadow bent to will. And still, beneath his rage and confusion, that pull grew stronger. Not a summoning, not a challenge, a tether. The moon pulled at him, but something below it anchored him. When he crested the final ridge and looked down at the ancient stone circle, the sight stopped him cold. They had gathered in a ring of silence, elders, sentries, guards, whispering in broken fragments. And at the center, on sacred ground marked with burnt runes and the shattered remains of a forbidden chalice, knelt a girl, barefoot. Blood at the corners of her mouth, skin glowing faintly beneath the ribs. She wasn't restrained, she wasn't fighting, she was just breathing. And the moon, still black overhead, pulsed in time with her chest. Kaelin shifted back before he realized he'd even made the choice. The wind was cold against his bare skin, but he barely noticed. His heartbeat was thundering in his ears, and the moment his boots hit the floor of the circle, every alpha present stepped aside. No one blocked his path, not even Morvain. Kaelin stalked toward the center, eyes never leaving the girl. This was the source. This was what his wolf had felt from miles away, what it had submitted to without command. This girl, this impossible nothing from nowhere, with mud on her legs and holy blood drying on her lips. Her head lifted slowly, like she hadn't heard them coming at all, like she'd only just returned from someplace far darker. Their eyes met, and something broke open inside him. He didn't recognize her. Not truly, but his wolf did. It howled in silence, then bent its head low, not to be dominated, not out of fear, but because something older than blood and rank had chosen her. Kaelin Blackmore, Alpha King, ruler of a dozen fractured territories, whose name made enemies flinch and pack lords kneel, stood frozen, and inside him, his beast, a creature made of instinct and iron, bowed. Before she even looked at him, they kept her under watch, but no chains held her. No walls, no sigils, no locks. Not that any would have mattered. Elra sat at the edge of the sacred pool 3 nights after the chalice shattered, her feet skimming the moonlit water, skin too warm for the cold air. The wounds she'd carried her whole life, thin scars from lashes, burns across her arms from kitchen oil, a twisted ankle never properly healed, were gone. Not faded, Gone. Her skin bore no trace of the life she'd lived beneath them, no evidence that she'd once been broken, used, forgotten. The guards whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. The ones stationed nearby grew agitated the longer they stood watch, snarling under their breath, baring teeth at shadows. Others grew eerily quiet, still as statues, falling into deep trances with eyes fixed on her face. Some couldn't stand to be near her at all. Ceres stayed, always a few paces behind, arms folded tight, jaw clenched like she was waiting for the moment Elra exploded. But her wolf, though Elra couldn't explain how she knew, was curious, not afraid, not yet. The elders didn't speak directly to her. They gathered at a distance, circling like vultures, unsure if the prey was dead or just sleeping. Morvain watched her with a fury she could feel, like heat on the back of her neck. They weren't sure what she was, but they knew what she wasn't anymore. She wasn't Omega. She wasn't nothing. She had become something they didn't have a word for, and the moon wasn't done with her. On the 7th night, the moon rose full again, impossibly early. No eclipse, no shadow, just silver, burning brighter than she had ever seen. The light touched her skin like a blade, and she dropped to her knees as it carved a symbol into her back, fire and frost rippling through her bones. She didn't cry out. She didn't need to. The howl that left her throat wasn't hers. It was the moon's. The wolves in the keep responded before they could stop themselves, howling as one, even those too proud to kneel. Even those who didn't know why their beasts had suddenly stilled. Even the Alpha King. Kaelin stood on the balcony above, shirtless, unmoving, watching her as though the world had just revealed a secret it had kept even from him. She collapsed. The stone beneath her burned silver. When she woke, Ceres was crouched beside her. "You've been marked." Elra didn't respond. Her back still felt hot, like something alive had been branded onto her spine. "The elders want to see it," Ceres added, softer now. "Of course they do," Elra murmured. "They wanted to study it, name it, control it, but they wouldn't understand it. It wasn't theirs to wield." The council chamber was colder than she remembered. She stood in the center, alone, under the same Harvard moon that had watched generations of pack leaders rise and fall. The elders were arranged in a circle. Kaelin stood beside them, silent, arms folded. He hadn't spoken to her since the night he arrived, but his presence was constant, waited, watching. "Remove the wrap," Morvain barked. Elra's jaw tightened. Ceres, standing behind her, undid the bandages. The room inhaled in unison. The mark was black at first glance, but under moonlight it shimmered. Not a scar, not ink, a symbol older than pack sigils, older than alpha seals. The runes curved like howls in motion, spiraling across her shoulder blades and spine in a language none of them could speak, but all of them could feel. The youngest elder stepped forward. He held a relic designed to translate marks from the old tongue. He pressed it to her skin. The runes glowed. Then the relic cracked in half. He stumbled back. Morvain snarled, "Speak!" The boy's face was bloodless. His voice cracked. It said, "Origin." Silence dropped like stone. Not Queen, not Luna, not Alpha. Origin. Elra turned slowly, meeting every elder's eyes. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. They already knew. The bond that gave Alphas their dominance, their strength, the ancient pulse they pulled from the moon, now flowed through her. The keep turned quiet, but not with peace. It was the kind of quiet before a hunt, when every creature holds its breath, ears perked, waiting for the first step to break the stillness. Elra felt it before she heard it, through the floor, through her skin, through the air that didn't seem to move unless she did. She walked the halls now without flinching under eyes. Not because they'd stopped watching, because they watched too closely. Some bowed their heads as she passed. Some dropped to one knee, whispering her name like prayer. Others just stared, lips drawn back slightly, fighting the instinct to growl. The mark on her back pulsed faintly, visible only under moonlight, but they all felt it. Even the humans knew something had shifted. Factions were forming. She'd never been important enough to divide people. Now every step she took cracked the foundation of what wolves believed. "She's a vessel," whispered one soldier near the east wing, "a herald of the first." "She's dangerous," said another. "What happens if she decides she wants the throne?" "She doesn't have to want it," came the reply. "She is it." The council met twice a day now. The scent of fear soured their cloaks. And Kaelin watched in silence, like a king forced to weigh an impossible war before the first sword was drawn. He didn't speak to her, but she knew. He was choosing between the world that crowned him and the truth that bowed to her. Cerys never left her side, the only constant in a landscape shifting too fast. "You should eat," Cerys said one night, setting down bread and hot broth. "You haven't since yesterday." Elra stared at the bowl. "I'm not hungry," she said. The moon had fed her something else, light and silence, power that curled like smoke in her chest. She could feel the pull now, wolves beneath the mountain breathing differently when she moved, packs in the outlands waking with her name on their tongues. "You're changing," Cerys muttered, folding her arms. Elra didn't answer. They both already knew. It was just a matter of time before someone tried to stop it. The attempt came the next night. 2 guards, loyal to Morvain, entered her quarters under pretense of patrol. Their steps were too quiet, their scents masked with ash and pine. Elra was seated near the fire, back to the door, cloak loose around her shoulders. She didn't look up. The dagger left its sheath with a whisper. The second attacker stayed back, waiting for the first to bleed her clean. He never got the chance. The instant the blade was raised, the air broke. It cracked, not with sound, but pressure, like the world flinched. The attacker froze mid-stride, blade trembling in his hand. His body locked, lungs refusing air. The second man faltered, unable to cross the threshold. His wolf whimpered without reason. Elra stood slowly. She didn't move toward them. She didn't speak. The glow from the fire lengthened behind her, casting her shadow high against the stone. Her eyes burned silver. The dagger clattered to the floor. Both men dropped to their knees, not because they were commanded, because something in their blood demanded it. Cerys burst through the door seconds later, blade in hand, but she didn't strike. She just stared. Kaelin arrived before dawn. The guards were still kneeling, still unable to rise. No orders held them, just her presence. The council chamber erupted when news spread. "An attack within the king's own walls! This is treason!" "Your guard, Morvain, your men. Can we still pretend this girl is harmless, that her power won't corrupt the packs?" "She is not Alpha. She is not Luna. She is not anything we understand." Kaelin didn't speak until they'd shouted themselves hoarse. Then he stepped forward and said the one thing they feared most. "I claim her." Silence. "I invoke the right of Oathbind," Kaelin continued, voice low and iron heavy. "She stands under my protection now, by blood and bond. Any who threaten her answer to me." "No one has used Oathbind in centuries," Morvain spat. "You would tie your rule to a creature the moon itself changed?" Kaelin's eyes glowed faintly. "The moon changed her, and now it changes us." The elders fell to argument again, snarls and curses and threats. But Elra, back in her chamber, didn't hear them. She stood at the window, staring out over the trees, arms loose at her sides. The moon hung high, and far below, in the barracks and towers, wolves dreamed of silver eyes and breathless power and knelt without knowing why. The archives hadn't been opened in decades. Some said centuries. Hidden beneath the roots of the keep, past a gate sealed in bone sigils and silver, The place was meant only for the highest of the council, the ones old enough to remember when the first packs still roamed wild, when the moon's voice wasn't something they doubted, but obeyed. Kalen descended into that darkness alone. Not because he needed to, because he had to know. The scrolls were brittle, bound in leather, etched with claw marks older than kingdoms. Names half erased by time, lineages twisted into myths. But one name returned again and again, carved in every tongue. Varkun, the first howl, not a king, not a tyrant, a beginning. Kalen's fingers ran over the ink, his jaw tight, heart heavy. He thought of Elra, of the mark on her back that no elder could decipher, but that every wolf felt. Of the way his own beast knelt without hesitation, of the way she walked now, like she carried the tide with her, unmoved by those trying to drown her. He opened the final scroll sealed with the sigil of the moon herself. It wasn't long, just a few words. His blood was never meant to rule. It was meant to choose. Kalen exhaled, slow, and then quiet laughter, not his own. He turned. Morvain stood in the doorway, eyes shadowed with rage and something colder. "You found it," the elder said softly. "I did." Morvain stepped inside, boots silent on ancient stone. "Then you understand. She is not prophecy. She is not a weapon. She is a mistake." Kalen looked at him. "A mistake the moon accepted." "She will unmake everything we've built." Kalen didn't flinch. Then maybe it wasn't built right. Silence settled between them, thick, unforgiving. Morvain's voice was quieter this time, almost pleading. "You were supposed to be the last Alpha King, the one to carry the bloodline to completion. You were the end." Kalen turned back to the scroll. "Maybe I was just the bridge." When he returned to the keep, the wind had changed. Wolves avoided the corridors she walked now, not out of fear, reverence, maybe, or recognition. They knew she wasn't like them, not alpha, not bound to the laws that had shaped their teeth and titles. She didn't speak often, but when she did, wolves listened, even the ones who hated her, especially them. That night, the council summoned her. Kalen arrived first. They wouldn't begin without him anymore. She entered without ceremony, cloak trailing behind her like dusk. Her eyes caught the light of the moon through the ceiling slats, and for a moment the chamber dimmed, just enough to be noticed. Not magic, not show. The moon acknowledged her, that was all. Elra stopped at the center of the stone ring. "I'm here," she said, voice soft. It was the only challenge she ever needed. Thorn Ashridge spoke first, always the cautious one. "We've reviewed the records, the scrolls, the ones kept from the younger generations." She didn't respond. Kalen watched her carefully. "You carry the mark of the origin," Thorn continued. "But more than that, you carry the pulse of the first." Morvain stepped forward. His face was calm, controlled. "We know now that Varkun's blood wasn't a crown. It was a key, a force that chooses, not by strength or conquest, but by balance." Elra said nothing. The silence grew heavy. "You are not meant to rule," Morvain added, eyes narrowing. "You are meant to reset." Still, she didn't answer. Kalen stepped forward. "She is not yours to label." "She belongs to all of us," Morvain snapped. Elra raised her gaze, and something in the room shifted, a crack in the air, a stillness that didn't come from fear, but from truth being heard for the first time. "I don't belong to anyone," she said, not angry, not loud, just final. "Not to the moon, not to a throne, not to a name carved into broken stone." Her voice rippled across the chamber, soft as falling ash. "I was not chosen to rule what you built. I was chosen because it needs to end." Gasps. She stepped closer to the fire pit in the center of the circle, where the council judged all things, and looked down at the flame. Your laws were made to cage. Your hierarchy was born from fear. You crowned wolves for power and silenced balance. She looked up. I'm not your queen. Kalen's wolf surged in his chest. I'm your consequence. Silence. And then it broke. The youngest elder stumbled back. Another fell to one knee. Not because she willed it, because something in their blood knew she could not be bargained with. She could not be commanded, and she could not be replaced. The offer came wrapped in silence. No grand announcement, no ceremony. Just a chair, high-backed, carved from the wood of the first tree felled by alpha hands, dragged to the center of the council chamber and left there. Empty. Waiting. Kalen hadn't spoken the words aloud, but everyone knew. When a power emerges that even the moon bends toward, wolves look for a throne to put it on. But Elra never sat. She walked past it like it was another broken chain, and no one dared place her in it by force. In the days that followed, the tension in the air changed. Not softer, just quieter, like breath before a howl. Packs that hadn't spoken in years sent word. Disputed borders suddenly went still. Long feuding bloodlines called ceasefires without knowing why. Some whispered it was diplomacy. Others said it was fear. But Kalen knew better. It was her. Elra moved through the keep like something both alive and timeless, and wherever she stood, something shifted. Rogues calmed. Restless wolves found sleep. Feral pups stopped shaking when she passed. The old healer with the twisted spine stood straight again for a breath. She healed nothing with touch, only presence. And for some, that was more terrifying than any weapon. He watched her more than he should have. He told himself it was duty, but duty didn't explain the way his wolf quieted in her presence, not with submission, but peace. Like it had finally found the stillness it had been hunting all his life. He'd ruled with fire, fought with steel, endured blood and betrayal. But Elra, she wielded neither dominance nor demand, and still, every instinct in him bowed. She didn't ask for power. She simply was it. One evening, Kalen found her outside the keep, standing barefoot in the frost-kissed grass beneath the rising moon. Her hair shimmered in the pale light, unbound, wild as the night itself. He stepped quietly, but she didn't turn. "I know you're there," she said, voice calm. "You always do," he replied. She glanced at him, eyes catching silver. He joined her in the silence. The wind pulled through the trees. Somewhere, a wolf howled low and long. "I used to dream of this place," she murmured, looking toward the horizon. Not the keep, just being seen. He looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't fragile, not anymore. But there was a softness beneath the strength, like winter sunlight. A quiet ache that hadn't left just because the world had finally noticed her. "You were always meant to be more than they let you be," he said. She shook her head. "I wasn't meant to be anything. That's the difference. I wasn't shaped for a role. I wasn't groomed for power. I just survived." He stepped closer. "And now you carry more than any of us." She didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, warm despite the cold. His voice was softer when he spoke again. "You know I offered you the throne." She nodded. "And you didn't even ask why." "Because I already knew," she said. "You think it will make them follow me, that if I wear the crown, their fear becomes faith." He didn't deny it. "But if I take the throne," she continued, "I become what they understand. Another alpha, another ruler, another shape for the old world to mold around." Her gaze lifted to the moon. "And I wasn't brought here to fit. I was brought here to break it." He stepped closer again, close enough to feel the warmth of her, close enough to see the mark at her throat pulse in time with the moon above. "You are not what I expected," he said. and there was something raw in it. She turned to him fully then. Neither of them moved away. The moment stretched, breath, heartbeat, something older. And Elra, for the first time, let it show, the bond, not formed by blood or bite, but felt, deep, ancient, like two forces drawn to the same point in space, endlessly colliding and circling. "I feel it too," she said quietly. The wind stilled. "I feel the pull between us." Her voice trembled, not with fear of him, but of what the feeling meant. She looked away. "And it scares me." The moon came for her in silence. Not in light, not in shadow. In the space between breath and bone, when sleep pulled her under and the world let go. There was no room, no bed, no body, just sky, vast and silver black, pressing close like a second skin. And in that sky a howl so ancient it had no voice. She stood barefoot on a lake that wasn't water. It rippled beneath her but held no reflection. Only memory, and the moon hung above her, closer than it should be, wider than mountains, brighter than suns. Watching, waiting. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The moon already knew her name. A shape stepped from the horizon, tall, broad, cloaked in fur and fire, a presence that turned the sky molten behind it, eyes like dying stars. She knew who it was, not Kaelin, not Morvain, not anyone who still breathed. Varkun. The first howl. He didn't speak either. He simply raised one hand, and the lake beneath her feet turned to glass. In it, Elra saw herself. 10,000 versions. In some, she ruled from thrones carved in skulls. Her voice was command, her presence, war. The world bent to her because it feared her. In others, she was silent, hidden. She disappeared beneath robes and chains, vanishing into myth while others twisted her story. Power or erasure, weapon or ghost. The first alpha held both choices out before her. A crown, a grave. Her chest ached, her mouth was dry. She understood what this was now, the moon trial, not a test of worth, a test of choice. She dropped to her knees, fists clenched against the glass. The crown weighed nothing, but it seared her skin. The grave was cold, too easy, too quiet. Tears slid down her cheeks. Not from fear, from fury. She wasn't born to be a queen. She wasn't born to be erased. And this test, it was a trick. "I am not what you made me," she said aloud. Her voice cracked across the sky. "I am not your sword." Her hands shook as she stood. "I am not your silence." The moon pulsed overhead, silver deepening to black, then glowing again like a breath. "I choose," she whispered. "I choose me." The crown shattered. The grave crumbled. The first alpha vanished without sound. And the moon howled. The lake beneath her rippled once, then burst upward in light, swallowing her in fire that didn't burn. She opened her eyes with a gasp. Kaelin was already at her side, hands gripping her shoulders. She was in her room, in her bed, but the walls shook with something ancient. And every alpha across the continent, from mountains, valleys, cities, dens, fell to their knees, clutching their chests, as the bond between them and the moon reset. Raiden Crowfang arrived with blood on his boots. He crossed the threshold of the keep like it belonged to him, cloak snapping behind him like the echo of every war he'd ever won. His pack followed, black-armored, rigid, bristling with a kind of obedience carved from fear, not loyalty. The moment he entered the hall, the wolves went silent. Elra felt the shift before she saw him. It was in the way the air tightened, the way the stone beneath her bare feet felt colder than before. The way Kaelin's stance sharpened beside her, not in panic, but readiness. Raiden did not bow. He walked straight to the heart of the chamber where she stood, looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You do not get to change the law." Elra tilted her head. "The moon already did." He bared his teeth. "You think dreams and silver light make you ruler? I was born in fire, forged in blood. I took my title with my claws, not because the sky whispered my name." "I don't want your title," she said quietly. "You stand in its place." Silence. The council remained in their seats, half of them stiff with tension, the rest frozen in anticipation. The lines were already drawn. Elra hadn't moved. She hadn't raised her voice, but the old order had felt her presence like a fault line, cracking everything beneath it. Raiden stepped forward. "I challenge you, Moon Witness, Pack Witness, Blood Witness." The words cut through the air like blades. Kaelin stepped in front of her, jaw clenched. "You'll have to go through me." Raiden smirked. "I expected nothing less from a fallen king." Elra stepped forward, past Kaelin, past the circle, until she stood within arm's reach of Raiden Crowfang. "I accept," she said. Gasps followed. Kaelin didn't move, but his eyes darkened. Ceres swore under her breath. Raiden's grin widened, savage. Good. The duel did not begin with a bell. It began with the sound of a heartbeat. 1, 2, and then Raiden lunged. His shift was brutal, a blur of fur and fang, claws tearing through the floor as he charged. He was all fury and instinct, the kind of alpha who'd never needed a throne because he ruled with violence. Elra didn't shift. She didn't lift a hand. She only stood there, eyes glowing silver, calm as moonlight. When he struck, the air between them broke, and Raiden Crowfang froze, not paralyzed, stopped, his body locked in place mid-leap, like time had forgotten him. His breath caught, his limbs trembled. Elra didn't move. Her presence, that impossible stillness, crashed into him like the sea, drenching his rage, drowning his dominance, stripping him of every illusion of control. The moon pulsed above them once, and Raiden fell to his knees. Not defeated, unmade. He shifted back, panting, chest heaving, eyes wide with something far worse than pain. Recognition. The room remained silent. The council rose slowly. No one said a word. One by one they removed their crests. Elders stripped of title, authority shed like old fur, not in defiance, in surrender. The old order dissolved without a scream. Kaelin stepped forward. He didn't kneel at her feet. He knelt beside her, not a servant, not a protector, a partner. And Elra reached for his hand, her voice soft as falling leaves. "No more thrones," she said. "No more chains. Not for me. Not for you. Not for anyone." Balance, not control. That was her rule. The moon, high above, answered in silence, and its light bathed them both. They called her many things. Moon-touched, flame-blooded, the silent howl, balance-born. But Elra Vale never wore a crown. She walked through the ruins of the old order, not with pride, but purpose. Where thrones once stood, she planted seeds. Where war had grown its roots, she cleared the ash and let silence bloom. She never gave orders. She offered presence, and wolves listened. Packs that had torn each other apart over bloodlines and broken treaties came to the sacred grounds without weapons. Some limped, some bowed, but none dared raise their voice above hers, even when she didn't speak. The old ranks dissolved, not in battle, but in stillness. She stood beneath the moon, and it was enough. Territories once claimed by violence shifted with a word from her lips. Not commands, invitations. Her touch didn't command submission. It invited peace. In her presence, alphas remembered why the bond had been made in the first place, not to dominate, but to unite. No one named her queen, and still they followed. Kaelin stood beside her through it all. Not a shadow, not a shield, an anchor. His strength did not dim beneath her light. It found clarity in it. Their bond was not a mating claimed in blood or ceremony, but something older. something wilder, a choosing. When she looked at him, she saw not the king he'd been, but the man he'd chosen to become. And still, she never claimed him. She only ever asked him to walk beside her. Ceres stayed too, though she never stopped watching, never stopped guarding. Even when there were no more threats to slay, no more edges to keep sharp. She said she was waiting for the world to forget. Elra said, "Let it," because she remembered. She remembered what it meant to be nothing, to scrub floors no one would step over, to drink water from broken buckets and lie awake wondering if silence was safer than breath. She remembered what it felt like to be invisible in a world that worshipped power. And now, power had a new name. Origin. Not ruler, not goddess, not queen. Origin. She didn't rewrite the laws. She let them die. She didn't raise cities. She made sure no one would be buried beneath them again. Pups born after the moon turned black would never know the word Omega. They would never kneel because they were told to. Only because they wanted to. And if the moon ever chose again, it would do so without chains. The council was gone. The wars quieted. Not because of fear, because Elra Vale had reminded them what it meant to begin. And when the moon rose high and full, silver blazing across the wild sky, every wolf, no matter their rank, their blood, their past, felt it beat inside them again. Steady, balanced, free. The girl who had once been nothing was now legend, not above them, but within. The moon did not make her queen, it made her the beginning.